Okay, let's just dive right in. We hear about climate change, pollution, biodiversity loss all the time, right? And we usually think of them as separate problems. But what the science is telling us, loud and clear, is that they're not separate at all. They're all connected. So today, we're going to break down the science of what's being called the polycrisis, this dangerous feedback loop where our planet's biggest threats are actually making each other worse. For the last 10,000 years, that's basically all of recorded human history, we lived in an incredibly stable climate period. It's called the Holocene. And just think about that for a second. That stability, it gave us everything. Predictable seasons to grow our food, reliable rivers to build our cities next to. It was the very foundation of civilization as we know it. Well, that predictable world is gone. We've pushed the Earth's systems so far that we're now stumbling into a totally new reality. It's chaotic, it's unpredictable, and the old rules, they just don't apply anymore. And that brings us to this key idea, the polycrisis. This isn't just about having a bunch of problems at the same time. It's about how they crash into each other. So a record-breaking heat wave isn't just a hot day. No, it fries the crops, which creates food shortages, and that can spark social unrest. You see? The combined effect is a cascade. It's so much worse than the sum of its parts. So, to really get a handle on this, let's think like doctors for a minute. We're going to start with the diagnosis by looking at the three major symptoms, the big crises that are all converging to create this perfect storm. Symptom number one, our planet is running a fever. There's no debate on this among scientists. We have already warmed the Earth by 1.1 degrees Celsius. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but believe me, it is the difference between the stable world we were born into and the chaotic one we're living in right now. And here's the really crucial part to understand. This warming isn't a straight line. A little bump in the average temperature doesn't just mean slightly warmer summers. It juices the odds of extreme events. A heat wave that used to be a rare once-in-a-decade thing, at just 1.5 degrees of warming, it's on track to happen over 4 times as often. The second symptom, and this one is a real gut punch, is the unraveling of the living world all around us. That number, 73%, it's just staggering. It means that between 1970 and 2020, in just 50 years, the average population of monitored wild animals has plummeted by nearly 3/4. This isn't just about saving pandas. This is the sound of the entire web of life tearing apart. And while this is happening everywhere, the damage isn't spread out evenly. The world's most vibrant, most biodiverse places are getting hit the hardest. Just look at Latin America and the Caribbean. A 95% decline. I mean, that's almost a total wipeout. The very engines of life on this planet are sputtering. Our third symptom is something we are literally breathing in every single day, systemic pollution. Take a good look at that number, 8.1 million. That's the estimated number of people who died in 1 year from air pollution. It is now the second leading risk factor for death on the entire planet, right behind high blood pressure. We are choking on the byproducts of our own economic. And this pollution crisis goes way beyond the air. The entire life cycle of plastic, from start to finish, is a toxic threat. From the massive greenhouse gas emissions just to create it, to the thousands of hazardous chemicals mixed into it, plastic is a risk to our health and the planet long before it ever ends up in the ocean. Okay, so we've seen the symptoms: climate disruption, biodiversity collapse, widespread pollution. But what's the underlying diagnosis? What makes this convergence so incredibly dangerous? Well, it's because we are pushing Earth's systems towards irreversible tipping points.
A tipping point is exactly what it sounds like. It's the point of no return. You know, think of it like leaning back in a chair. You can lean, 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 and then you hit that one spot, and bang, you're on the floor. There's no going back. That's a tipping point. A small nudge that triggers a huge, abrupt, and permanent change.
So to make this real, let's just ask a pretty terrifying question. What happens when a vital organ of the planet, like a rainforest, starts to fail? What if the Amazon rainforest, which literally makes its own weather, forgets how to make rain? This is the terrifying logic of what they call the Amazon dieback loop. It's a domino effect. Deforestation and drought weaken the forest, so it produces less rain. Less rain makes the forest even drier and weaker, and way more likely to burn. You see where this is going? It's a vicious, self-feeding cycle that once it really gets going, could be impossible to stop.
And the consequence of that tipping point would be globally catastrophic. A dying Amazon could release up to 90 billion tons of carbon dioxide. To put that in perspective, that's more than double what all of humanity emits in a single year. One ecosystem collapsing would trigger a massive acceleration of global warming. That's how a local problem becomes a global catastrophe.
And look, this isn't just about abstract science or faraway ecosystems. This planetary diagnosis translates directly into what the United Nations has called an atlas of human suffering. That powerful quote from the UN Secretary General really reframes everything. He's saying these scientific reports filled with charts and data, they're not just reports. They are chronicles of real people suffering right now because our planet is destabilizing. The scale of this is just immense. Almost half the world's population, 3.6 billion people, live in places that are highly vulnerable to climate shocks. Billions already don't have enough water, and after years of progress, global hunger is now rising again. The very foundations of human survival are cracking under the strain. And wherever you have that kind of instability, you get conflict. Environmental breakdown forces millions from their homes every single year. It cranks up the competition for basic resources, and it measurably increases the risk of violence. The takeaway here is stark. This isn't an environmental issue. It is one of the biggest threats to global peace and security we have ever faced, period. So, the diagnosis is dire. There's no sugarcoating it. But, and this is a really important but, it is not a death sentence. The science also shows us a path forward. It's just that it requires nothing less than a complete transformation of our world. The world's leading climate scientists are practically screaming this at us now. The time for tinkering around the edges, for small incremental changes, that time is over. The scale of the polycrisis demands a response that is just as big. As they warn us, half measures are no longer an option. So what does that transformation look like? Well, it boils down to rewiring the three main systems that got us here in the first place. First, our energy system, moving rapidly away from fossil fuels. Second, our food system, shifting to farming that works with nature, not against it. And third, our entire economic model, moving away from take, make, and throw away to a circular economy, where waste is designed out from the very beginning. You know, we find ourselves in this unique and frankly kind of terrifying moment in all of human history. We are the very first generation to have the science to see the full interconnected picture of this crisis, and we're the last one with a real, meaningful chance to change the ending. So the question that leaves us with is simple, but it is profound. What will our legacy be?